You're nobody! The words exploded like a slap, sharp and public, echoing down the linoleum hallway of the Crestview Senior Housing Office. Danielle Price stood in the doorway, arms folded tight against her chest, jaw set, eyes scanning the figure before her as if he were a nuisance in her mourning. Her voice had volume, not strength, but it was enough to silence the waiting room behind them. Outside the doorway stood Leonard McAllister, 87 years old. Back straight, but only because he'd practiced it in the mirror that morning. He wore a pressed wool coat, cleaned shoes, and carried an old leather binder hugged close to his chest, the edges softened by decades of touch. His voice, when it came, was calm, unbothered. "I was told to come early, ma'am, just to speak to someone." Danielle didn't blink. Her grip on the doorknob tightened. "We don't take walk-ins! You're wasting my time, as in everyone else's. You want sympathy? Try the church." She slammed the door. It rattled in its frame, a metallic thunk that turned the heads of everyone in the waiting room. Len didn't flinch. He simply stood there for a moment, quietly adjusting the collar of his coat. His binder shifted slightly under his arm. Down the hallway, unnoticed by most, a tall man in a dark blue blazer stepped out of the elevator. His silver hair was cropped close. His shoes made no sound on the tile. Rows of medals gleamed faintly on his chest beneath the lapel. His eyes, however, they locked immediately on the closed office door, then on Len. Colonel Everett Mayfield had arrived, and he had seen everything. The morning had come soft and gray, the sky still wrapped in its sleepy mist, as Leonard McAllister stood at the window of the room he rented behind a shuttered tailor's shop. A single beam of daylight crept through the curtain and settled across the photograph on his shelf. Muriel, forever young, frozen in black and white, smiling from beneath her Sunday hat. Len touched the edge of the frame, fingertips steady despite the slight tremor that had recently become his companion. The old soldier stood straight and tall before a mirror streaked with age. With care, he buttoned his shirt, smoothing the fabric between each motion. His slacks were pressed last night. His coat bore no insignia, no patches, just the quiet dignity of neatness. He reached for his shoes, polished the evening prior, and slid them on without a sound. Then, from the top drawer of a narrow desk, he removed a leather binder, worn smooth with time, its corners frayed like an old memory, and tucked it beneath his arm as if it were something sacred. Outside, the sidewalk glistened faintly with dew. Len walked with measured pace, his spine held as straight as it would allow. Each step carried the weight of memory and routine. As he passed the corner deli, the delivery man stepped in front of him without looking. Len paused, smiled faintly, and waited. At the next street, a child's ball bounced across the sidewalk. Len stooped to retrieve it, slowly, carefully, and handed it back with a soft nod. The boy didn't say thank you. Len didn't mind. At the bus stop, he sat 3 inches from the edge of the bench, hands resting on the binder. Across from him, 2 teenagers laughed loudly into their phones. One looked up briefly, then turned away. The bus hissed to a stop, and Len rose. Inside the vehicle, he offered his transfer ticket with a crispness that startled the driver. No one spoke during the ride. Len simply stared out the window, watching the city wake. They passed a faded mural, a tribute to service, half covered by graffiti. He looked away. At Crestview Senior Housing, the complex loomed pale and efficient. Its lawn was precise, its windows spotless. Len adjusted his collar and stepped through the front gate. He was early, of course. 15 minutes by his own reckoning. That was the rule back then. Early is on time. He had rehearsed his words, stacked the documents just so. Each letter in the binder was sealed in plastic. Letters from soldiers he'd never met again, some gone, some still living quiet lives like his. As he approached the main office, the door was closed. A glass panel framed his reflection, slightly bowed with age but still unbroken. He stood quietly, not knocking yet, letting his breath settle. He could hear voices beyond, hurried, clipped, stressed. Behind that door, Danielle Price was juggling her morning chaos. Her inbox had doubled overnight. The maintenance reports were late. 2 meetings overlapped. And now, someone tapping at the door. She opened it with a jerk. What now? And that's where it began. Danielle Price didn't mean to shout. Not exactly. But the stress had pressed her voice into something sharper than intended. As the office door flung open, her words struck like a gust of cold wind. "You're nobody!" she snapped. "You don't even have an appointment!" Len blinked once, unmoved by the tone, and straightened his shoulders. He held his binder gently between both hands. His voice came out steady and low, as if shaped from the same silence he'd spent a lifetime walking in. "I was told to come early. Just to speak, ma'am." Danielle glanced back inside, clearly overbooked, and then narrowed her eyes on the man before her. Not another one of them. Not today. She exhaled. "Not my problem. We don't accept walk-ins. You want pity? Try the church." And with that, she slammed the door. The sound echoed down the front corridor. The receptionist looked up from her desk, startled. One of the maintenance crew, crouched in the hallway, paused mid-task. Behind the shrubs by the side window, someone in a charcoal suit shifted, unnoticed for now. Len stood there a moment longer, motionless. His breath came calm, though something in his jaw flexed slightly. Slowly, he turned and stepped back from the door, binder still clasped tight, as if it were the only thing that kept his dignity upright. He moved toward the small bench beside the outer path, the kind meant more for decoration than rest. It offered no shade, no comfort. But Len sat there anyway, lowering himself with patient precision. From the edge of the binder, he pulled out one page, unfolded carefully. A letter dated August 1953. A truck had broken down on the border of a supply route. They hadn't eaten in 2 days. Len had rerouted his inventory against protocol, delivered crates himself on foot. "You saved our morale," the letter read. "You kept us human." Signed, Corporal Reese. Len read it quietly, then folded it again. Inside the building, Danielle returned to her desk, already forgetting the man's name, if she ever knew it. She vented to a staff member with clipped phrases and exaggerated sighs. "These walk-ins think we're a charity," she muttered, "as if showing up in a jacket makes them a saint." A receptionist, barely out of college, glanced toward the door. "He was polite," she said softly. "He just wanted to talk." Danielle didn't hear, or didn't care. 10 minutes passed. The retired colonel stepped out of his vehicle and approached the complex entrance. Colonel Everett Mayfield moved like a man built from time itself, deliberate, tall, silent. His silver hair was trimmed neat beneath his cap, the buttons on his dark coat polished without pride. He had seen the exchange. He had watched it unfold through the reflection in the glass. And now, he waited. Inside, Danielle was reviewing applications with furrowed brow when Len returned, unsure, still holding hope like an old coin polished smooth. He knocked gently. The door opened again. "Didn't I say no?" Danielle barked. "Are you hard of hearing too? We're full. Try somewhere else." Len's eyes didn't blink. He dipped his head slightly. "I see. Thank you," he said. He turned, walked away. The click of his shoes echoed too clearly in the hallway. Behind him, Danielle hissed under her breath, not softly enough. "Entitled old men think their war stories are rent checks." The receptionist flinched. The air turned thick. Colonel Mayfield reached for the door. The wind howled like an animal that night. Snow didn't fall gently. It came sideways, hurled by gusts that clawed at canvas and flesh. The Korean hillside was a chalk-gray blur beneath the moon, and every man in the forward supply tent could feel the cold bleeding through boots and bone. Len McAllister stood alone beneath the flickering lamplight, sleeves rolled to his forearms. His fingers were raw and red, sorting crates labeled in fading ink. Rations, boots, iodine. He moved with method, not rushed, not slow, a rhythm earned through repetition and necessity. Outside, the cough of an engine sputtered and died. A distant crack of artillery echoed like a memory no one wanted to recall. The flap of the tent burst inward. A medic, barely 20, stepped in, face pale and wet with sweat despite the cold. "We're out of stretchers," he panted. "2 down in the ravine. Can't move one of them without a board. The other's bleeding fast." Len didn't hesitate. He didn't ask who. Didn't ask where. He only turned to the pile of rolled tent canvas stacked in the corner. 2 cuts with his folding blade, 3 quick tugs of spare webbing, and a lash of belt straps from an old supply rig. In less than a minute, he had framed a stretcher. Crude, but strong. The medic stared. "Sir, that'll hold?" Len was already cinching the knots tighter. "We don't leave men in mud," he said. They hauled it out together. Through the cold, through the dark, through the screams and wind and silence. At the edge of the ravine, 2 men lay in the snow, one conscious, teeth clenched, hand pressed hard to a leg wound. The other didn't speak, just shivered, his eyes wide and blinking slow. Len crouched beside them, without a word. He lifted the lighter one first, slid him gently onto the canvas, adjusted the weight to balance across the rails. "Back in 30, he muttered, mostly to himself. When the second pass came, another figure stood at the tree line. A medic again, but younger. Green uniform, trembling hands. He helped lift the second man onto the same rigged stretcher. When they reached safety, the medic turned, breath fogging in the air. "You're McAllister?" he asked. Len nodded. "You saved my cousin." "That was him. I saw what you did." Len only dusted the snow from his sleeves. "It's what anyone would do." The medic swallowed. "No, sir. It's not." A shell boomed somewhere in the distance, lighting up the sky for a second like dawn through ash. Back in the present, decades and lifetimes later, Colonel Everett Mayfield watched that same man, older now, walking away from the office door. The sky was pale blue, the sidewalk clean, but Mayfield still saw the snow. He still remembered the way those hands had moved, the stretch of canvas, the straps. He stepped forward. Colonel Everett Mayfield stepped through the double glass doors of the housing complex with a calm that masked a tide. His shoulders remained square despite the years, and the sharp crease of his navy blazer echoed the same authority he'd once worn beneath camouflage and grit. The receptionist spotted him first, her breath catching for just a beat before she straightened and stepped aside. Across the lobby, Danielle Price turned as if called by instinct. Her eyes landed on the brass medallion pinned to his chest, a quiet gleam of earned weight, and her posture changed, almost reflexively. She smoothed her blouse, stepped forward, and gave her best smile. "Colonel Mayfield, we weren't expecting you this morning. If I had known you were—" He raised one gloved hand, not in greeting, in silence. It was the kind of gesture that didn't need words to carry weight. She stopped mid-sentence, blinking. "Who was the man you turned away?" he asked. Danielle hesitated. He didn't have an appointment. "Sir, we have a strict intake protocol and—" He was standing still, quiet, respectful, binder in hand, and you slammed a door in his face. Danielle shifted, arms crossing. "With all due respect, Colonel, we have limited housing and an overwhelming volume of applicants." "That man," Mayfield interrupted, stepping forward, "once built a stretcher from tent canvas and belts because we had nothing else. My cousin would have died in that ravine if not for his hands." She blinked. "I didn't know." "No," he said. "You didn't ask." Behind her, staff members had gathered silently. No one spoke. The sound of the HVAC hummed above them, filling the space with an artificial stillness. Leonard McAllister carried soldiers out of the jungle, kept them dry in blizzards, and never once asked for recognition. Mayfield continued. "Now he asks for a room, not a medal, not praise. A room." Danielle opened her mouth, closed it again. Her clipboard hung limp at her side. The colonel exhaled slowly. "Bring him back." Leonard McAllister sat beneath a budding elm tree 2 blocks down, his binder balanced across his knees. The sidewalk was warm in the morning sun, but the wind still carried a bite. His hands, now steady, turned the brittle page of a yellowed photocopy, a letter from Private Harold Dunn, dated March 1953. The ink was smudged in places, but the words remained. You kept us warm when the snow didn't. I never forgot, sir. Never will. Footsteps broke the silence. Light, quick, then hesitant. A young woman in office shoes slowed to a stop beside him. She held her breath before speaking. Sir, Mr. McAllister, she said gently. He looked up, squinting through his glasses. Someone's here to see you, she added. They'd like you to come back. Please. Leonard blinked once, then folded the letter carefully and slid it into its place. The young woman reached out her hand to help him rise. He didn't take it, but he nodded in gratitude, using the bench arm instead. He moved slowly, but with the same dignity that had guided him through supply tents and typhoons. Back in the complex lobby, the air had changed. There was no bustle, no clipped orders, just quiet. Danielle Price stood to the side now, her arms loosely at her waist, her eyes lowered, but watching. Colonel Mayfield approached first, extending his hand. Leonard shook it firmly. You still carry them, the colonel said softly, eyes drifting to the leather binder. They carried me longer than they ever knew, Leonard replied. Danielle took a tentative step forward. We've opened a room, she said. A good one, courtyard view. We'll take care of the paperwork now, if that's still all right. Leonard met her eyes. There was no bitterness in his gaze, only distance. The kind that comes from having survived enough storms to know which ones matter. He nodded. All right. A staff member brought a chair. Leonard sat down, and someone brought him a glass of water without being asked. He placed the binder on his lap like a trusted friend, resting one hand lightly on its surface. Around him, no one spoke, but the room felt warmer. At the reception desk, a new sign had been placed discreetly in the window. Veteran inquiries welcome, with respect. 2 weeks passed, and a new plaque appeared in the front lobby of the Brookview Senior Living Center. It was brass, carefully engraved, mounted against a panel of dark cherry wood, just across from the receptionist's desk. The top read, In Quiet Service, Leonard McAllister Quartermaster, United States Army Korean War, 1950-1953. Beneath the inscription, a single phrase followed in smaller text. He never asked for thanks. He just made sure no one was forgotten. Residents paused by it each morning, some adjusting their gait just to glance at it again. A few saluted. One man left a single white carnation beneath it. He didn't say why. Inside the boardroom upstairs, changes were quietly ratified. Colonel Mayfield's presence during a second unannounced visit carried weight that made policy feel personal. He shared stories, not speeches, just names, dates, and the faces that went with them. By the end of the meeting, Brookview formally adopted a veterans' first housing policy, allowing qualifying veterans priority placement, waived initial application fees, and personalized case assessments with dignity at the forefront. Danielle Price now conducted every veteran intake interview personally. She no longer began with clipboards or spreadsheets. Her first question had changed. How may we help you today, sir? She still moved quickly, still checked boxes, still answered calls with that professional tone, but something had softened behind her voice. She read up on service history now before every appointment. She took time to ask, to listen. One Thursday morning, Leonard sat beside her in a small conference room, helping a fellow veteran sort through a file of utility bills and references. His eyes were slow, but his patience was deep. You were in the same outfit as one of my boys, he said to the man. I've got a cot with your name on it if you want help finding a place. Danielle brought in coffee. She didn't interrupt, just smiled. The colonel would return again later that month, but not to supervise. He brought no uniform, just his cane and a thermos of strong black coffee. He and Leonard sat outside in the complex's newly named service garden, where a new row of tulips bloomed near a small stone engraved with the words, "Every man deserves a place to be remembered." The morning sun slid gently through the blinds of Leonard McAllister's new room, casting long golden rays across the small desk near the window. A modest shelf sat beside it, lined with worn paperbacks, a folded American flag in its triangular case, and a single framed photograph. Muriel, forever young, smiling with a tilt of her head. Next to it, now nestled in a wooden frame, was the handwritten letter from Private Harold Dunn, the one Leonard had been reading under the tree. He stood slowly, smoothing the front of his shirt. His shoes were polished, the crease in his slacks still sharp. These small things, precision, order, pride, had followed him long after the battlefield fell silent. Leonard moved toward the window, drawing the blinds wider with quiet fingers. The courtyard below was just waking. Birds flitted between the hedges. A gardener adjusted a hose at the edge of the lawn. Wind stirred gently through the flag above the building, pulling it outward in soft waves. He watched it flutter for a long moment, one hand resting on the windowsill. Then he turned, walked to the photograph, and nodded once. "Told you we'd find something warm, Muriel." He reached down, lifted the leather binder, the one filled with years of quiet thanks, of names written by men who'd once leaned on him in mud and fire. He set it beside her photo. 2 testaments, side by side, one of love, the other of service. Outside, a car eased slowly from the lot, Colonel Mayfield behind the wheel. As the vehicle passed beneath Leonard's window, the colonel looked up and raised 2 fingers to his temple. A salute, simple, lasting. Leonard watched him go, then closed the blinds with care. The sun remained, pouring warmth through the edges. He sat down in his chair, placed both hands on his knees, and breathed in the quiet. The story ends not in a grand hall or beneath a parade, but in silence, where honor lives longest. If stories like this resonate with your heart, like and subscribe for more untold moments of honor and kindness. Let us know where you're watching from, and if this moment brought back memories you carry with you. The best way to honor their memory is to keep listening. Click on the suggested video now, and we'll walk together through another untold chapter of courage and sacrifice.